That night was the craziest but most exciting night of my life. It was a quiet Friday when it happened. I was lying on my back, staring at the faint patterns of moonlight on the ceiling. My thoughts were scattered, and I felt restless. I felt lonely because my husband Henry was away on a business trip for the next 2 months. I hadn't seen him for 3 weeks. It was then, when I heard the door open softly, that I realized I was not alone. I squinted my eyes at the vague figure in the doorway. In the dim light from the hallway, the broad shoulders of my 19-year-old son, Alex, stood out. He was holding the doorframe with his hand, as if it was the only thing holding him up. He spoke quietly. "Mum." I rubbed my eyes hesitantly, my heart squeezing at the sound of his voice. "Alex, what happened?" I said, but he didn't answer immediately. He stopped, his shadow stretching across the room. Finally, he came in, taking a few steps on the carpet with the soft sound of his bare feet. The hesitation and fear in his movements made the air in the room even heavier. "I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice barely audible. I looked at the clock on the bedside table next to him. 2:14 a.m. Alex was not the kind of person who woke me up easily. That's why a feeling of unease rose in me. I sat up a little and gestured for him to come closer. "What's going on?" I asked gently. Alex hesitated again before sitting on the edge of the bed. His posture was rigid, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He was staring at the floor. The tension radiating from him was almost palpable. "Alex, you can talk to me. Whatever happens, I'm here," I said, my voice soft but the knot in my stomach tightening. At that moment, he let out a shaky breath. His fingers played with the hem of his t-shirt. "It's hard to explain," he finally said. "I've been feeling something lately, something different, and I don't know what to do." His words sent a wave of unease through me. I leaned forward slightly and, trying to keep my voice steady, asked, "What is this feeling you have? Is it about someone?" There was silence for a moment. "Yes," he finally said, still averting his gaze from me. "It's about someone, but not someone from this school." A strange uneasiness began to seep into my chest. "Then who?" I pressed slowly. Alex took a deep breath. His chest was rising and falling, as if gathering courage for what he was about to say. Finally, he looked up at me, and the words came tremblingly from his lips. "You." His mother, always you. His words hit me like tidal waves. The air was sucked out of my lungs. I couldn't speak. For a moment, I couldn't even think. My brain was trying to make sense of what I had just heard. "Alex," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Do you realize what you're saying?" He stood up and started pacing around the room. He ran his hands through his hair, tugging at the strands. "I know this is wrong," he said quickly, "but I can't help it. I tried to push myself away, I tried to ignore it, but you were always there." My heart was racing. I could barely hear his words. "Alex, this isn't right," I said. "Tell me this isn't real." His gaze sharpened. "You know it's real. I've never felt this way about anyone before. It's not just admiration or something stupid. It's something much deeper." Tears welled up in my eyes. My son, my sweet son, whom I loved unconditionally. Now he was saying something too complicated for me to explain. On the one hand, I tried to understand what he was feeling, but on the other hand, I knew I couldn't respond to it. "Alex, you're confused. I'm sure these feelings will pass," I said. "In time, everything will be clearer." His eyes were full. His chin was trembling. "What if it doesn't pass?" he whispered. "What if these feelings are true?" At that moment, I couldn't speak. I felt heavy inside. All I could do was speak in a way that reassured him. "It's a process, but you are not alone. We'll get through this, Alex," I said. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes full of vulnerability. "I don't want to lose you, Mum. I can't lose you." "I won't lose you," I said, squeezing his arm. "No matter what happens, I will always be here." He nodded silently and lay down on the bed. I tucked myself under the sheets. Nothing happened that night, but inside I knew this was the beginning. A quiet but powerful storm was approaching. I felt me like a suffocating weight in every corner, in every familiar object. With the unspoken tension between us, I tried to occupy myself with housework, hoping the routine would knock me down. But as I folded the laundry, my hands shook and my mind raced with unanswered questions. What did this mean for us? For her? For me? The sudden clatter of a chair in the kitchen snapped me out of my thoughts. Alex was sitting at the table staring into a bowl. A bowl of cereal sat in front of him, looking as untouched as my coffee cup on the counter. His hair was unkempt and his eyes were shadowed. His tiredness was written all over his face. She hadn't slept that night. Neither had I. In the silence of the morning, I cautiously broke the silence. He looked up, but his expression was again unreadable. "Morning," he said, his voice hoarse and lifeless. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, the sound of the liquid filling the cup louder than it should have been. I sat down at the table, the distance between us both too close and unbearably far. Neither of us spoke, the air thick with everything unsaid. "Alex," I said, "I meant what I said last night." The confusion and indecision in his eyes was obvious. "I can't act like this," I said. "I know I have to be honest." I continued in a soft voice. "Alex, what you're feeling? We can't act on it." He leaned back in his chair, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "Why not?" he asked, his voice full of frustration. "Why does love have to follow rules and boundaries? Isn't love free?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Love isn't just about that," I said. "It's about finding what's right for everyone, and what you're saying, it could hurt us both." He turned his head and averted his eyes. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's the last thing I can do." "I want to know," I said, reaching across the table and putting my hand in his. "I don't want to hurt you either, but we have to handle this situation carefully." His fingers gripped mine tightly. For a moment I saw that little boy, the one who held my hand when he was scared, waiting for me to guide him. But this was different. The way he looked at me was so different than before. "I guess I don't know if I can get over it," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "but I'll try for you." My eyes welled up. I squeezed his hand gently, that's all I wanted. The days passed in a strange blur. Alex tried to act somehow normal, but he kept his distance. He would retreat to his room and spend long hours alone. This space will do him good, I told myself, but I missed him, our old easy conversations, his relaxed demeanor. Everything changed after the night he confessed. One evening, as I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, I heard the front door open and close. Alex came into the kitchen. His hair was wet from the rain. He looked at me for a long time, as if he couldn't decide whether to say something or not. "You're just in time," I said, trying to keep myself calm. "Dinner is almost ready." But he didn't say anything. Instead, he leaned against the counter and crossed his arms. Finally, I turned off the stove and turned to him. "What do you think of us?" he asked. His eyes were fixed on what I had said that night. I swallowed hard. Of course I knew which night he was talking about. "Agreed," I said, but he interrupted me. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I just need to say this." I nodded, signaling him to continue. "What am I going to do with these feelings?" he said, his voice low but determined. "I don't want to lose something I have to my mum, even if it's not what I want." My eyes welled up. "I don't want to lose you." I took a deep breath. "Alex, you won't lose me," I said. "No matter what happens, I'll always be here." He nodded. His lips had become a thin line. "I know," he said, "but it's hard. It's really hard." "It's going to take time," I said. "But you're strong, Alex. I'm going to help you as much as I can." His eyes met mine. For a moment, the tension between us eased. "Thank you," he said. "That means a lot." We stood there, the rain pounding on the kitchen windows. For the first time in days, I felt like we were going to be okay. But life has a way of complicating things at unexpected moments. Subscribe to our channel for the rest of the story, wait for Series 2 and show us how much you want it in the comments.